What if a shy waitress changed a billionaire's life without even realizing it? She never asked for money, fame, or recognition. She simply showed kindness to a lonely deaf mother who visited her cafe every week. But when the billionaire's son walked in and saw his priceless family heirloom in the waitress's hands, he assumed the worst. What happened next left everyone in the cafe fighting back tears. Before we begin, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell so you never miss another heartwarming story. Now, grab your favorite drink, sit back, and let's get started. Emily Carter had always believed that the quietest people often carried the loudest hearts. At 24 years old, she worked as a waitress at Maple Corner Cafe, a cozy neighborhood restaurant tucked away on a peaceful street in Seattle, Washington. The cafe wasn't fancy, but it was loved by the locals. The smell of fresh coffee drifted through the air every morning. Soft jazz played from old speakers, and regular customers greeted one another like family. Emily fit perfectly into that warm atmosphere. She was polite, hardworking, and incredibly kind, yet so painfully shy that she often blushed whenever someone complimented her service. Her life had never been easy. When she was 16, a tragic car accident claimed the lives of both her parents. Overnight, she became the guardian of her younger brother, Noah. While most teenagers worried about school dances or weekend parties, Emily worried about paying rent, buying groceries, and making sure Noah never felt the emptiness their parents had left behind. She sacrificed college scholarships, personal dreams, and countless opportunities simply to keep their small family together. Years later, Noah had earned a university scholarship because of Emily's sacrifices. But she never considered herself a hero. She simply believed family came first. Every morning, Emily walked nearly 30 minutes to work instead of driving because it saved money on gas. She wore the same carefully pressed uniform every day, tied her brown hair into a simple ponytail, and greeted every customer with a sincere smile. Although she rarely spoke more than necessary, everyone at Maple Corner Cafe admired her gentle spirit. One Thursday afternoon, the cafe door chimed softly as an elderly woman stepped inside. She carried herself with quiet grace, dressed in an elegant cream-colored coat with pearl earrings that hinted at a life of refinement. Her silver hair was neatly styled, and despite her age, there was dignity in every movement she made. She chose the same table by the window and quietly waited. A new waitress approached her. "What would you like today, ma'am?" The elderly woman simply smiled without answering. The waitress repeated the question, speaking louder this time, assuming the woman had difficulty hearing. Still, there was no response. Confused, the waitress sighed impatiently before walking away to find Emily. "I think she's ignoring me," she whispered. Emily looked toward the woman and immediately noticed something different. Instead of looking distracted or rude, the woman watched everyone's lips carefully, almost as if trying to understand what they were saying. Emily picked up a notepad, walked over with a warm smile, and gently wrote, "Hello, would you like to write your order?" The woman's face brightened instantly. She nodded gratefully before writing that her name was Margaret Sterling and that she had been deaf for most of her life. Emily smiled kindly. "It is wonderful to meet you, Mrs. Sterling." Margaret smiled even wider. From that day on, every Thursday became something special. Margaret always ordered hot chamomile tea, vegetable soup, and a slice of apple pie. Emily memorized her order after only 2 visits. Before Margaret even picked up the menu, her favorite meal would already be on its way to the kitchen. Their conversations remained simple at first, carried through handwritten notes. "How has your week been?" "Very peaceful, thank you." "Your pie is fresh today." "You always remember." Those tiny exchanges slowly blossomed into an unexpected friendship. Curious to communicate more naturally, Emily began spending her evenings watching free online lessons in American Sign Language. After working 10-hour shifts, cooking dinner for Noah, and cleaning their apartment, she practiced signs in front of the bathroom mirror until midnight. Her fingers stumbled over unfamiliar movements. Sometimes she laughed at her mistakes. Sometimes frustration made her want to quit. Every Thursday motivated her to keep learning. Weeks later, Margaret entered the cafe as usual. Instead of handing over a notepad, Emily smiled nervously and signed, "Good afternoon. I'm happy to see you again." Margaret froze. Her eyes widened. For several seconds, she couldn't move. Then tears slowly filled her eyes. No restaurant employee had ever taken the time to learn her language simply to make her feel welcome. With trembling hands, Margaret signed back, "You learned. For me." Emily blushed and nodded shyly. "I wanted you to feel at home here." She signed carefully. Margaret reached across the table and gently squeezed Emily's hand. That single gesture marked the beginning of a friendship neither of them had expected. Over the following months, their conversations grew longer. Margaret shared stories about her childhood, her late husband, and the loneliness that had quietly followed her for years. Emily spoke about Noah, her parents, and the dreams she had tucked away while raising her brother. Neither woman judged the other. Neither cared about wealth or status. They simply enjoyed being understood. What Emily never knew was that Margaret Sterling belonged to one of the wealthiest families in America. The Sterling name appeared on hospitals, museums, universities, and towering office buildings across the country. Her only son, Ethan Sterling, was the billionaire CEO of Sterling Technologies, one of the fastest-growing artificial intelligence companies in the United States. Ethan was brilliant, disciplined, and admired in the business world. But behind the magazine covers and television interviews was a man who had become consumed by work. His meetings stretched across continents. His calendar was planned months in advance. His assistants reminded him to call his mother because he often forgot. He convinced himself that expensive nurses, luxury homes, and unlimited financial support were enough to keep Margaret happy. He had no idea she spent most Thursdays alone in a quiet neighborhood cafe, finding comfort in conversations with a shy waitress who expected nothing in return. One rainy afternoon, dark clouds covered the Seattle sky as Margaret arrived carrying a small velvet box inside her handbag. Throughout lunch, she seemed unusually thoughtful, smiling at Emily with quiet affection. After finishing her tea, she slowly removed the box and placed it on the table. Emily looked confused. Margaret gently pushed it toward her and signed. This belongs with someone whose heart is priceless. Emily carefully opened the lid. Inside rested a breathtaking antique diamond necklace surrounded by delicate sapphires, a treasured Sterling family heirloom that had been passed from one generation to the next. Its beauty stole her breath. Her hands immediately began to shake. Mrs. Sterling. This is impossible, Emily signed, quickly closing the box. I can't accept something this valuable. Margaret smiled softly and shook her head. You gave me something money has never been able to buy. Emily frowned. What could that possibly be? She signed. Margaret's eyes glistened with tears. You gave me your time, your patience, your kindness. You learned my language so I would never feel invisible again. Emily's own eyes filled with emotion. I only wanted you to feel cared for. Margaret gently closed Emily's fingers around the velvet box. Please, let an old woman thank the daughter she wishes she'd had. At that exact moment, a sleek, black luxury SUV rolled quietly into the cafe parking lot. The driver stepped out first, opening the rear door. Moments later, Ethan Sterling emerged, wearing a tailored charcoal suit despite the rain. He had planned to surprise his mother with lunch after canceling an overseas meeting at the last minute. As he approached the cafe entrance, his attention shifted toward the large front window. There, he saw a young waitress holding what looked unmistakably like his family's priceless heirloom necklace. His mother's hands rested gently over the waitress's. As both women fought back tears, Ethan stopped walking. His expression hardened. His heart pounded. From where he stood, it appeared as though a stranger had somehow convinced his vulnerable, deaf mother to hand over one of the Sterling family's most treasured possessions. Without another thought, he pushed open the cafe door and strode inside. Every conversation in the restaurant fell silent. The cheerful atmosphere inside Maple Corner Cafe disappeared the instant Ethan Sterling walked through the door. His polished shoes echoed against the wooden floor as every customer turned to look. Even those who didn't recognize him could sense the authority he carried. The cafe staff exchanged nervous glances, whispering to one another. They had seen Ethan on magazine covers, business news channels, and the giant digital billboard downtown that displayed Sterling Technologies' latest achievements. Few people had ever met him in person, and even fewer had witnessed the expression now fixed on his face. It wasn't anger alone, it was disappointment, suspicion, and fear. His eyes remained locked on the velvet box resting in Emily's trembling hands. Margaret noticed her son and smiled warmly. Lifting one hand in greeting, she began signing excitedly. Ethan, you're here. But Ethan barely looked at her. Instead, he stopped beside the table and stared directly at Emily. What exactly is going on here? He asked in a calm but icy voice. The entire cafe fell silent. Emily's face turned pale. She quickly stood from her chair, clutching the velvet box with both hands before holding it out toward him. I was just trying to give it back, she said softly. Ethan didn't reach for it. My mother's family has owned that necklace for over a century, he replied. It's never left our family. Emily swallowed nervously. I know, that's why I told her I couldn't accept it. One of the waitresses quietly whispered to another. She's in trouble. The manager slowly stepped closer, unsure whether to intervene. Margaret immediately realized what her son believed. She touched Ethan's arm and began signing rapidly. No, you're mistaken. But Ethan wasn't watching her hands. His attention remained fixed on Emily. Did you ask for this? He questioned. Emily shook her head immediately. No, sir. Did you tell my mother some sad story? No. Did you know who she was before today? Again, she answered honestly. No. Ethan folded his arms. Then why would she offer you something worth hundreds of thousands of dollars? Emily lowered her eyes. I don't know. Her voice was barely louder than a whisper. I only know she became my friend. Several customers quietly watched, expecting Emily to defend herself more strongly. Instead, she remained respectful despite the accusation. Margaret gently stepped between them. She placed both hands on Ethan's shoulders until he finally looked at her with calm but determined movements. She began signing. Sit down. Ethan hesitated. She repeated the sign. Please. Something in her expression reminded him of his childhood, when that same look meant she expected him to listen. Reluctantly, he pulled out a chair. Margaret took a deep breath and began telling the story from the beginning. She explained how every Thursday she visited the cafe alone. How employees often became frustrated because they couldn't communicate with her. How customers sometimes assumed she was rude simply because she didn't answer them. Then, she pointed toward Emily. She never treated me like I was broken. Ethan's expression softened slightly. Margaret continued. She wrote notes instead of raising her voice. She remembered my favorite meal. She laughed with me. She listened. Then came the words that struck Ethan harder than anything else. She spent months learning sign language just for me. Ethan slowly turned toward Emily. His eyes widened. You learned American Sign Language. Emily looked embarrassed. I still make mistakes. How long? She hesitated. Almost 6 months. You took classes. I couldn't afford classes. She smiled. Nervously, I watched free lessons, online, every night after work. The room became silent. Again. Margaret reached into her purse and carefully removed a small notebook. Its pages were filled with dates, tiny sketches of hand signs, and short messages Emily had written while learning. Every Thursday, Margaret had kept one page as a memory. There were hundreds of them. One page read, I finally learned how to sign good morning correctly. Another said, thank you for being patient while I practice. A third, simply read. Your smile made my week better. Margaret held the notebook against her heart before handing it to Ethan. Hands slowly flipped through the pages. Each one revealed another moment of genuine friendship. Not a single page mentioned money. Not once had Emily asked about Margaret's family. Not once had she hinted at gifts. She hadn't even searched Margaret's name online. To Emily, she had simply been an elderly woman who deserved kindness. For the first time in years, Ethan felt ashamed. He looked around the cafe and noticed something he had completely missed. Every employee smiled warmly whenever Margaret visited. Customers greeted her by name. The owner had quietly installed a small sign language menu near her favorite table because Emily had suggested it months earlier. None of it had anything to do with wealth. Everything had been done out of compassion. Ethan suddenly realized that while he had spent millions providing luxury for his mother, a shy waitress earning barely enough to pay rent had given Margaret something he never had. Her time, her attention, her friendship. He slowly stood, walked toward Emily, and for a long moment couldn't find the words to speak. Finally, with genuine humility, he lowered his head. I'm sorry, he said quietly. I judged you before I knew the truth. Emily shook her head gently. You were only trying to protect your mother. No, Ethan replied, his voice heavy with regret. I was protecting my assumptions. Margaret smiled through tears as she watched the two of them. For the first time in a very long time, she saw something changing inside her son. The billionaire, who could negotiate billion-dollar deals without emotion, had just learned the value of a kindness that no amount of money could ever buy. And the lesson wasn't over yet. For several long moments, no one inside Maple Corner Cafe spoke. The rain continued tapping gently against the windows while Ethan Sterling stood before Emily, still overwhelmed by the realization that he had completely misunderstood her. His apology had been sincere, but he felt it wasn't enough. Years of success had taught him how to solve problems with money, contracts, and influence. Yet standing in that small cafe, he understood that some mistakes required something far more difficult. Humility. Emily offered him a small, reassuring smile. It's all right, she said softly. If someone I loved looked like they were giving away something precious, I probably would have reacted the same way. Her kindness only deepened Ethan's guilt. Most people would have been angry after being accused in front of an entire restaurant. Instead, Emily chose understanding over resentment. Margaret watched the exchange with tears shining in her eyes. She reached for both of their hands and gently placed them together. Kind hearts should never stand on opposite sides. She signed. Ethan looked at his mother before quietly nodding. You've always tried to teach me that, he admitted. Margaret smiled. It's never too late to learn. The cafe manager, realizing the tension had finally faded, invited everyone to continue enjoying their meals. Slowly, conversations resumed. but many customers couldn't stop glancing toward the corner table. They had witnessed something extraordinary, not a business deal or a public spectacle, but a simple act of humanity that had changed 3 lives. Before leaving, Emily carefully placed the velvet box back into Margaret's hands. "I truly can't accept this necklace," she said. "Your friendship means more than any treasure." Margaret gently pushed it back once again. "This necklace has belonged to women in my family for generations," she signed. Its value isn't in the diamonds. It's in the love behind it. Today, I choose to give it to someone who has shown more love than anyone else. Emily's eyes filled with tears. "I don't deserve something so special." Margaret smiled warmly. Kindness never asks whether it deserves love. It simply gives it. Ethan took a deep breath before speaking. "My mother has never insisted on anything in her life unless it truly mattered to her. If you refuse, she'll probably keep bringing it every Thursday until you finally accept for the first time that afternoon." Everyone laughed. Even Emily couldn't help smiling. After a long pause, she accepted the necklace not because of its extraordinary value, but because refusing it any longer would have rejected the love Margaret wished to express. Weeks passed, and Ethan found himself thinking about Emily far more often than he expected. He visited the cafe every Thursday, at first to spend more time with his mother. Soon, however, he looked forward to the quiet conversations with the shy waitress who never treated him differently because he was wealthy. Unlike investors or executives, Emily never asked about stock prices, luxury vacations, or billion-dollar projects. Instead, she asked simple questions. "Have you had dinner with your mother this week? Did you finally take a day off? How are you feeling?" No one had asked Ethan those questions in years. One afternoon, he confessed something that surprised even himself. "I've built one of the biggest technology companies in the country," he said quietly, "but somewhere along the way, I forgot how to build relationships." Emily smiled gently. "It's easier to build buildings than trust." Those words stayed with him. Over the following months, Ethan began making changes not just in his personal life but throughout Sterling Technologies. He introduced paid volunteer programs that allowed employees to serve local communities during work hours. He expanded healthcare benefits to include hearing support and sign language interpretation for employees and their families. He funded scholarships for students studying American Sign Language and opened communication centers for deaf children.